Hey guys, welcome back to another week of Home Groups. Tonight we're going to be talking about progress and how do we progress as a church, how do we keep on moving forward as a church, but also as individuals. I believe that in order to make progress, we have to prioritize God's presence, because as we are intimate with the Father, as we are spending time with Him in the private place, naturally He will make us an influence into the public place. We become more like the people that we hang around. So if we're with God, if we're just in His presence, being filled up with His love, naturally that's who we're going to be. Naturally we're going to be displaying His love into the world without even trying. So when it comes to making progress, when it comes to prioritizing His presence, our only role in the whole thing, actually our only role in the whole entirety of the Bible, is simply to worship. Because when we worship, that brings us into God's presence, and naturally we become like Him, and we don't really have to worry, we don't really have to work, we don't have to really put effort into it. All we have to do is just worship, because what worship does is that it stirs us back into His presence. It snaps us out of these days that we're in. It pulls us from the world's worries, and it brings us just into His presence, into what reality truly is. And when I'm talking about worship, I'm not just talking about musical worship. I'm just talking about declarations of truth, speaking that truth over your spirit until you just snap out of it and you are back into His presence. It's something we should constantly do, not just once a week, not just twice a week, not just in the morning, but constantly throughout every moment of every day. We need to be worshiping with our lifestyles, with our minds, with our hearts, and so that we could be back in His presence. So tonight we're going to be talking about what holds us back from God's presence. And I believe it's a misunderstanding of what worship really is. So if you take a look at Job chapter 1, verses 6 through 12, you find out the enemy's tactics. And what the devil thinks, and what a lot of us think, is that our circumstances are tied to our worship, and our worship is tied to our circumstances. In other words, the devil's tactic is to attack our circumstances, because if he could attack our circumstances, there's a possibility he could attack our worship. And then if he could attack our worship, then we're not able to be in His presence. If we're not in His presence, we're not going to make progress. We're going to be stagnant, we're going to backslide. We think that if we worship, if we continue to pursue God, if we refrain from sinning, it will improve our circumstances. But when you read the book of Job, you find out that no matter how much he worshiped, no matter how much of a good man he was, no matter how much he shunned evil, that his circumstances still went down, no matter what. So, the main point tonight is that worship is not to improve your circumstances. It's not. Sometimes it can, and that's a whole nother message. But the main point tonight is that worship is simply to stir you back into the presence of God. That should be our priority. Worship may or may not improve your circumstances, but we need to learn how to worship despite the ups and the downs of our circumstances. So tonight, let's encourage each other on how we could worship and how our worship can remain constant throughout all the ups and downs of our lives. Thanks for watching, and you guys have a great home group tonight.